Okay, let's get started. Week 3 of our Token Drop podcast. So, last couple of weeks, we started off by talking about AI hallucinations. Then we talked about how to mitigate those hallucinations. I thought an interesting discussion today would be, hey, you have now these agents that are using these LLMs, and how can you ensure that they do their job properly, that they don't deviate from what they're supposed to be doing, right? And certainly there's been a lot of discussion in the industry about different protocols, A to A and MCP. But to me, those are just kind of the plumbing of how things should talk to each other. It doesn't really address this higher level issue of how do you make sure the agents stay in bounds, do their jobs, et cetera. And so maybe we can talk a little bit today about that topic is, what can the industry do or what is needed to ensure that agents stay on the true and narrow path to do what they're supposed to. So over to you, Sajat. I'd like to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I think I can think of governance at many levels. I think it credit is due to the LLM providers where credit is due. Effectively, Anthropic had this offering called constitutional AI. So they defined a set of broad principles that their LLMs will actually do and comply with. So privacy protection, preventing the LLM from giving bad advice. Uh, and if you were to ask an LLM how to make a bomb, it'll refuse to answer that question. So there are things that are being baked into the LLMs themselves. So it's not to say that we're inventing something new. I think uh, the tooling has, uh, some of these principles already baked in, human values, alignment with human values and such. But at the end of the day, LLMs are still next token prediction engines, and they can make mistakes, and those mistakes ripple through, workflows. And as they cascade through these workflows, the errors might actually increase and diverge, creating significant downstream impact. In fact, one of our colleagues, Nafisa Hussain, wrote about how these errors propagate through workflows,
Mm-hmm.
amplify, right? So,
Right.
and that's a classical example of how things can actually fail. So, and I think governments are taking note of this. The government of California has approved a bill called Assembly Bill 316 that says anybody who's offering AI services is liable for any misbehavior by these agents, right? You can't just get away saying, oh, the AI did it, I'm not accountable for it. So now increasingly companies are responsible, accountable, and even liable. And when liability comes in, I think the standard for behavior, well-behaved systems actually goes up significantly. So my background is, I worked in the consulting industry, and at Wipro, the quality control that we used to have in my old job was a quality management system. So we had all of these industry standards like ISO 9000, ISO 27001. Eventually, we went to Six Sigma. And what Six Sigma meant to me was you're allowed at the most about 3.4 defects in whatever you do per million opportunities to, make those mistakes. So in a million different tries, you're only allowed about 3.4 defects, which means the rest of the times you're supposed to succeed. So that's a gold standard for quality, right? GE popularized Six Sigma.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of the Japanese companies, manufacturing companies like Toyota, Nissan, and others, Honda, they implemented this, uh, you know, quality principles and practices. What does it mean in terms of AI? I think Anthropic introduced a beautiful term called constitutional AI. And as you more broadly extend that to agentic systems, right, where agents collaborate to perform some tasks, or even when you have a simple system, when there is a single agent trying to perform a given task, regardless of the scenario, whether it's one agent performing one task, multiple agents performing multiple discrete tasks, or multiple agents collaborating with each other, I think we're speaking about a governance layer that makes sure that these systems are well behaved. I'll pause here. I'll let Sam chime in with his thoughts on what is the state of AI agents today and where we are headed with regards to governance and controls.
So, according to me, the core insight that everyone has converged on is that the shift that is happening in 2026 is from viewing governance as compliance overhead to recognizing it as an enabler, right? That's the first thing. And the second thing is what I'm really thinking is mature governance frameworks increase organizational confidence to deploy agents, right, in high value scenarios, creating it creates a virtuous cycle of trust and capability expansion, right? I mean, so that is how I'm viewing that actually. And now, why it is very interesting in multi-agent systems is that because multi-agent system introduce unique governance challenges because multiple AI agents interact, right? They communicate and make interdependent decisions, creating emergent behaviors, right? I mean, that are harder to predict and control actually. So that makes it even more important that we have proper governance in there. And organizations must extend governance frameworks to address agent-to-agent communication, coordination mechanisms, and collective decision-making processes. So generally, that layer seems to be missing today. That's what I'm saying. What do you say, Sunil, actually? Man, do you think?
Well, it seems like one example, I'm just thinking about how could this apply to a customer. And let's say there's an agent and it's a generic agent, right? It can do an action based on a request from me or a request from you, Sam. My access to data may be different than your access to data.
Correct.
So if I ask it to get something for me, I need the system, this governance layer needs to make sure that it doesn't access data that I'm not entitled to and give me an answer that I'm not entitled to based on data that I shouldn't have access to, or vice versa, right?
Correct.
So that's just a single agent scenario, but an agent could be smart enough to say, hey, I don't have access to it, but maybe I'll try and get around it by asking this other agent to get the information for me. So that seems to be like what this whole governance layer is about. Thou shall not
yeah.
do this and that.
Yes.
I think like Sajjad was already talking about this. I mean, I really look at this as the three-layer pyramid actually, where the top level is the policy actually about what and why. The second layer is the rules plus guidance, which gives you the constraints and the interpretation for that. That is called the control translation. And the third is the procedures, which he was talking about, which is the exact steps, the operational execution part of it. Sajjad, you have more things about it. You just chimed
No,
earlier
you're
about
spot
this.
on. No, you're spot on, Sam. Thanks a lot for saying this and for offering that. And yes, there are some policies that guide behaviors. Just like, I don't like anthropomorphizing AI and equating them to humans. But in this case, I can't help but, anthropomorphize these agents because
Yeah.
just as, collections of individuals, whether you're in a society, whether you're at home as a family, the unit as a family, or the unit could be a society, the unit could be a company, an organization, or even a country, regardless of what the unit is, these units are governed by a constitution, right? There are some either written or unwritten rules on what you can and cannot do, what is considered good behavior. And then there are roles assigned. Like if you're in a family, you have certain roles. You work in a company, you have certain roles. And associated with those roles, you have responsibilities, accountabilities, entitlements, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. Same with agents, right? Agents need to be governed by some kinds of policies, and different agents have different roles, and those roles are clearly scoped out. And then there are traces, right? There's audit trails. Whatever an agent does should be logged for retrospective analysis, post-mortem analysis, and so on. And there's also got to be some overrides, right? If your agent is performing a critical function, like transferring large amounts of money from one bank to another bank, you want some circuit breakers there where the agent can stop and say, hey, I'm
Mhm.
about to execute this task, but I need a human being to
Right.
just review what I'm doing. So this calls for, I mean, this is the key critical difference between microservices and agentic systems.
This seems like it's, if I was to think about it from a laptop standpoint, right? A laptop has a bunch of applications, and there's an operating system that enforces policies that have been set down to say, hey, this application can't have access to that application's memory or whatever. This seems to be an analogous thing that you're saying for AI as well. You have these
Indeed.
AI agents, and you have to have an OS kind of thing
Yeah.
to enforce policies for
Yeah.
AI systems.
Correct. So it's talking about operating systems. You have either threads of execution
That's
within
right.
an operating system, or in the application layer, you have microservices.
Right.
The big difference between those entities and AI agents is that agents have agency.
That's right.
So whatever they choose to do is not all hard coded, it's not all
That's right.
hardwired by the
They
engineer.
can think for themselves.
Yeah, so because they have, the more useful an agent is, the more you're going to delegate ability to the agent to perceive its environment, to perceive all the signals,
Right.
then plan a response, and then decide what tools to use to execute that response and to actually go out and execute those actions.
Right.
Whereas in the case of operating systems or microservices, the developer would have very clearly stated exactly what the microservice should do and should not do, or what the thread in the operating system can and cannot do. Whether you're asserting a lock, you're acquiring locks in a particular hierarchy in a particular fashion. So a lot of that is hardwired by the developer. Whereas in an agentic environment, agents can make a lot of these decisions based on the situation or the scenario.
That's right.
And that's what makes them much more harder to govern. And given the fact that they depend on LLM for understanding whatever they perceive, for developing their execution plans, or deciding which tools to call and how to execute those actions, they're more likely than not
Well,
asking an LLM to guide them.
that's right.
So, because the LLMs can make mistakes, the environment is ripe for all kinds of mistakes across this whole.
It seems like as you have more of these protocols, there's more things that the LLM can do independently, right? It's in the days of the laptop when maybe before they had USB ports, you didn't have to worry about it, but now you have a USB port. So you have to worry about people doing nefarious things use that, right? In one of my previous companies, they locked down the USB port, so I couldn't use it for putting in a dongle, etc. So it seems like as the number of protocols allowing you to do more stuff, these agents to do more stuff comes about, the need for this layer becomes more and more important. With great power comes great responsibility to enforce these policies.
Yeah, couldn't have better. I couldn't have said that better myself. Exactly. With great power comes greater responsibility because you're allowing them some autonomous, execution abilities, which means now you need far greater, which means they need to now operate far more responsibly.
Yeah.
Right. So
somebody's got to watch over them. I mean, it was interesting because Sam the other day had mentioned this emergent technology for agents to create a UI on the fly to enable to get information from people. So you don't have to have a predefined UI. It seems like, the agent can define that on the spot, right?
A to UI, actually,
Yeah.
we've been talking about that, right? I mean, it's a
So-
very, very interesting thing. And
Yeah.
that is an emerging trend, actually.
Yeah.
And it can create the UI for different types of
So
devices.
you could create a UI where it tries to get information it shouldn't. And again,
Yeah.
there needs to be some layer,
Yeah.
the operating system or something to prevent it from happening. Doing
Yes.
Like, for example, right, here is a very typical behavior which I observe, right? When you are trying to do prompt engineering, you give it a bunch of rules, and in those rules, you could say, do not access the production system, right? You give that to the LLM, it seems to be working fine. Now, after some time, what happens? It starts summarizing that stuff. And suddenly, somewhere, the fact that you said it cannot access the database of a production system gets lost, and it finally comes back and says we need to optimize on the usage of databases or something like that. When that is summarized, the complete meaning behind it is gone, and suddenly you find the LLM has accessed the production system, and you really do not know why that happened, right? To prevent that, you really need some kind of a policy, right? Which is the intent, and then the intent getting translated into rules and guidance to the control translation, and then the actual operational execution part, which is beneath it, right? So you need this multiple layers.
Are you saying, Sam, like the way I would think of that is, let's say I have a database and you have multiple agents trying to, access that database and, write or something like that. Are you saying that that's an example of where you have to manage these resource accesses?
Yes, whenever there are the agentic communication, agent-to-agent communication, and there are many areas where you need to go cross levels, right? Actually, at that point, you need perfect coordination. And I think that the current technologies, the protocols will help you somewhat, but they don't help you a lot, and you need this pyramid which I was talking about in terms of governance, policies, rules, guidance, and procedures to guide that whole thing. So that exactly that's what enterprises want. They want definitive things happening actually, not some random combination and something getting screwed, right? I mean, so yeah.
Very interesting. Well, I think we're talked out on this subject. You guys have anything else you want to say on it, or should we
No,
just
I think this lines up nicely with our story on reliability and trustworthy AI. I think, governing agentic systems, whether it's a single agent performing a single task or multiple agents performing multiple different tasks or multiple agents collaborating on a single large task. I think governance is critical, and governance by and large provides oversight on what they can and cannot do, what they have, what each agent has access to, what entitlements they have, what they don't have,
Right.
and then to leave behind an audit trail of everything they did. So if something were to go wrong, you can at least trace back and find out what happened.
It's not an operating system. I just use it as an analogy, but it's a broader term. There's got to be a broader term for this.
Correct. Yeah, that's why I keep getting tempted to, find analogies with human societies.
Yeah,
Companies.
like you said, the Constitution.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Sam, anything else, or I think that's it for this
I
week.
think we have talked about it in depth, like what it takes to do this. I think we have touched every point there. I think yeah, I mean this piece is completely missing right now, and that is where people need to concentrate. And again, this is not something the whole industry recognizes this, and they are seeing that there is this gap that's there, and so yeah, I mean, hopes it gets addressed soon. Actually.
Yeah, it was a very interesting conversation
Yeah.
this week. Great. Thank you, guys. We'll talk to everyone next week.
Yeah.
Thank you.